Hi, my name is Stephen Malfitano with Tribe of One. This is the first in a series of videos covering the intimidating DaVinci Resolve 16 user reference manual in a chapter-by-chapter, step-by-step approach to this giant tome. The PDF file is almost 3,000 pages. Click the link in the description to download the PDF file for free and follow along for a comprehensive insight into one of filmmaking's most widely used and respected platforms for complete video editing and rendering. Now, what is DaVinci Resolve? Well, it is considered a non-linear editor, or NLE. And, well, what does that mean? That has a reference back to the way that they edited film in the 20th century, when what they had was just reels of film, and they would have to take the film, make a decision where they wanted it to make a cut, and then add another piece of film over it, and they would actually cut it with a razor blade. Take the other piece of film, place it directly where they wanted it to be, and then they would put clear tape on it. Once they had all those done all the way through the reel of film, you would end up with this big massive reel of film that had been cut and spliced and taped together, and then they would run that through and make a master film without all of the cuts. And that was considered linear editing down the line of the film. With the advance of digital editing, we no longer have to do that. We can edit clips in any order that we want. We can place them on top or underneath each other. We can make transitions to various different clips regardless of their position. And we don't have to edit in a linear fashion anymore. So that's why it's called that. Now, while we're going through these videos, you may notice that it seems like we skip sections sometimes or jump around a little, and that's only partially true. Some of the chapter bookmarks in the PDF file are a little out of order. I've tried multiple downloads and have used various PDF viewers, and the issue still persists. So we have to deal with that. Other times, I feel the sections could have been reordered a little more logically for a better learning and workflow, and so I'll end up going a little out of order because it just makes a little more sense. Sometimes, though, a topic may reference something from another chapter or section that I feel needs to be addressed immediately, so I'll go ahead and jump ahead and explain that before coming back and continuing with the current section. Now, one example of this happens right off the jump. More specifically, the issue of what you experience the first time you download, install, and open the software. That's going to involve a few user preference settings, which is actually covered later in the chapter. But if you're just using DR for the first time, you need to get through that. So we'll do that first, and then we'll come back and jump into the meat of the video and go step by step through the chapter. So let's install DaVinci Resolve for the first time. So if you follow the link in the description to the free DaVinci Resolve 16 download, you'll come to this page. You can just click download here. You'll be giving an option of going with DR16 or DR Studio 16. The difference here is paid versus free. The Studio 16 is the paid version, and it's actually a very good deal. It's just about $300 one-time fee, lifetime upgrades. As far as I know, it's lifetime. And it is just packed with features. What you gain from the paid version is access to all of the different tools, all of the different grading, film grain, blur and mist effects, and a lot more. You don't have access to every single one of those in the free version, but honestly, I use the free version and I haven't actually just seen a great necessity yet to upgrade. But if you're looking around $300 and consider that to use Adobe Premiere Pro costs over $300 a year for the rest of your life, just to rent the software, and we're talking about a $300 one-time fee, it really is a great deal. But especially at first, just go ahead and download the DaVinci Resolve 16 free version. Click on your operating system. You'll be taken to a page where they want you to fill out your information. Now, I've already actually downloaded the file and gave them my information. I uninstalled it from my system so that we could see what it looks like the first time that we install it. So let's go ahead and do that. Let me find my downloads folder. It'll come through in a zip file, DaVinci Resolve 16.1.1 Windows zip. You'll have to unzip that and then go into this file and double click the exe file. And we wait. When you get to this pop-up, I'd suggest you just leave it the way it is. You're not going to need PostgreSQL unless you already know what that means, and then you will need it, but we're going to talk about that in just a minute. And hit install. Get to the Resolve Setup Wizard, click Next, If you would like to read this, go ahead. I don't think I've ever read one of these. I accept the terms because if you don't, you can't install it. And that's how they get us. If you would like to choose a different location to install to, you can do that here. I pretty much just leave it the way it says and install. And again, we wait. And the first thing we get to is this welcome page. If you have never opened it, I would suggest maybe checking out the welcome tour and the what's new, but that's really out of the scope at looking at the user manual. So I'm just going to go ahead and skip tour, but go ahead and do that if you've never seen any of it before. Quick start. When you see this screen, this is simply telling you whether or not your operating system and graphics card are up to spec. There's a link in the description to the required specifications to run DaVinci Resolve, so go ahead and take a check at that, especially if any of these gives you a red X. Now this is telling me I'm okay, so I'm going to continue. Now this is where you choose what your new projects will open as initially. Or you can select this one. I'll choose my resolution later. Most of my projects are done in HD 1080p. Now this is where you choose where DR is going to store the media as you import them into your projects. This is fine for me. I choose continue. Now, if you've used a different video editing software, you can choose one of these and the keyboard in DaVinci Resolve will be set up just like that one. Now, I pretty much started doing this with DR, so I just choose DaVinci Resolve. Now you're all set. Let's start. It should open us up to the project manager once we get past the pretty little boot screen here. And we wait some more. And it opens us up into an untitled project. From here you can basically start importing media and editing. But this is actually not where we want to start, because typically, let's go ahead and shut the software down and then open it up again. Because this is what you're going to see every time you open DaVinci Resolve from here on out. It's going to start with the project manager, which is the first chapter that we're going to discuss here. Now let's jump back into the manual. Now this manual starts with the getting started with DaVinci Resolve. We're going to skip that. Now I actually shot and edited the whole video for the getting started section. And then when I watched it, I realized it was extremely boring and it read almost like a commercial. They tell you way too little about way too much. This PDF file is almost 3,000 pages. The getting started section takes you from start to finish of the software in 38 pages. It does not tell you enough. It basically just ends up being like, hey, this is what the rest of the manual is actually going to be about. So it didn't accomplish anything. I went ahead and skipped it. We're going to jump to part 1 of the introduction, and we're actually going to jump to chapter 2 of the introduction, because chapter 1 is the introduction. And it is nothing more than a rehash of the getting started section. It's just a few pages. It does not tell you enough about any of this stuff to really get you going. And we're trying to do an in-depth look at the user manual. So the first thing that you're going to see when you open DaVinci Resolve is the project manager. Now the only difference between untitled project and new project is the fact that, well, when you click new project, you get to name it right away. There's some other minor differences that we'll deal with in some later videos, but for right now, we'll just start a new project called New Project. And it will open that up for us. Now, once you have a project open, if you want to get back to the project manager, just come down here. There's 2 icons that are very important. This is your project settings that will let you get to the settings for this project, and there's the project manager. Click on that and you're right back here where you started. If it looks like this right now, click the Show Hide Databases button. And this will be the database that DaVinci started for you when you open the software. It will put it on the boot drive that you installed DR into. One reason you may want to actually start a second database is if you have multiple drives on your system, and let's say you only use one of them as a boot drive. You install software in it, it's a faster drive, maybe smaller, but you don't want to load it up with unnecessary data. That's the issue that I have with my laptop. So the local database that DaVinci Resolve put on my laptop, I don't use it. I started a new one on my 1 terabyte hard drive so that I wouldn't fill up my solid state drive with the data. So if you want to start a new database, click New Database. Go to Create, not Connect. Keep it on disk. PostgreSQL is for people that are collaborating, basically on a much more professional level. You don't need to use that. Just use disk. Name it. You can't use capital letters or spaces in the name. Choose a directory. I'm going to just put it in my documents because I only have one drive on this system. But if you had a second drive, just go down to the drive you want to put it on. Create a folder if you want to, or just put it on the parent directory. It doesn't matter. But when you get to the location you want to put it, you have to click New Folder and name that. Now, you don't have to name it the same thing that you did your database, but I'm just doing that for the sake of convenience. And select folder twice. And then hit Create. This says the first project has not been saved. Yes, go ahead and save that. And there is my second database, and that is the one that I am currently on. Now up here we have the backup and restore icons. If you want to back up and restore your entire database, this is the sort button, sort it by these options. The information button, this tells you the status and location of that database. I don't really ever need to see that, don't really know why you would, so I just keep that off. You can search through your databases. And actually, once I've chosen the database that I'm going to use for my software, which in this case will be the local database, I just leave that shut down. I don't really need to look at it anymore. Up here we have the zoom button for the thumbnails. I keep that maxed out. You can sort your projects. You can show the information. I typically leave that on. Lets you see the resolution of your timeline and the last time you modified it. And you can show list view. I like to keep thumbnails on. Then you can search. If you right click over a project, you have a list of options. You can open in read-only mode. Typically there's an open function listed here too, but we already have it open, so it's not showing us that in case you're looking and it's different on yours. You can close it, rename it, save as. You can import a project, export a project with stills and LUTs. Stills and LUTs are files that people use to deal with their grading, with their effects, with their color grading, that is, with their effects. And they do take up some room, so if you may or may not choose to include those with your exported files. Then you can restore or export a project archive. Now, let me explain real quick what the difference between exporting a project or exporting a project archive. It really just comes down to the media. If I export a project, it's going to condense it all into a file with a DRP extension. This one would be called newproject.drp. Now, when I took that to another system and opened it, the media does not go with it. So all of the clips that I have in this project, unless I sent those along with the exported project file, when someone goes to open it on another system, all of the clips are going to show up with a big red warning light on it saying media offline, and you're not going to be able to see any of the footage. You have to relink the clips, and we'll deal with that in another video. But if you archive a project, then it will put it into a folder with a .dra extension. Inside of that folder will be the exported project, and will also be a media file containing copies of all of the media. So if you archive a project, put it on a flash drive, take it somewhere else, open it up in DaVinci Resolve on that system, everything will be fine because the media will be right there with it. So that's usually the way to go if you're going to be transferring projects from one system to another. But I'll let you guys decide how you best want to do that. You also have project settings. You can jump right into the settings of whichever project you've clicked over. And you have dynamic project switching. Now what this is, by the way, just notice that once you enable that, it didn't look like it did anything, but it's enabled now. So it will stay enabled now until you select it again. And what that has done is now I have the ability to open up multiple projects at the same time and jump back and forth between them. Now this is very RAM intensive. If you do not have a hefty machine with at the very least 32 gigabytes of RAM, I would not recommend doing this. It will probably freeze up your system and DaVinci will crash. If you come up with a reason that you want to work on 2 projects at a time, then give it a try and see if your system can handle it. We also have closed projects in memory, update thumbnails, and refresh. Now, since it concerns project management and is actually in this section of the manual, let's take a look at the project notes function in the file menu in an open project. So let's close this. We're already in this open new project. Let's go to the file menu and go to project notes. Now this is a scratch pad included in every project. You want to take notes on where you're currently at in your editing process. At the end of an editing session, you want to quickly jot down what you need to do the next time you get going on the project. I know for me, it's real easy to kind of forget where I was the day before, especially if it may have been multiple days. So I just type in here, what I want to do the next time I start the software. Click save, and now it's there. So if you open it again, there you go, reshoot database video. It's set up for me. Let's go back to the project manager. You can also create a new folder. And if you want to put your projects in there, just drag and drop, and now it is in that folder. If I want to get it out, right click, cut, go back to home, right click, paste, took it out of there and put it back where it was. Now I could get rid of this since I don't need it anymore. There's nothing in it. And I'm right back where I started. And really that's a wrap for the managing projects and databases section. Next we're going to take a look at chapter 3 of the introduction of the user reference manual, user preferences.
User preferences and settings? Those are my favorite.
Steve?
Oh, hi Steve.
I think you're creeping them out a little bit.
No, they're my friends. We're going to do user preferences and settings together.
Tell you what, why don't you go play with the rest of the tribe? I'll take it from here.
Oh, okay. I like playing with the tribe too. I'll see you later.
Sorry about that. He tends to get a little loose every now and then. Preferences and settings are my favorite, huh? Said no one ever. Yeah, this stuff's like the toxic sludge of learning a new software, but it really helps if you get this stuff taken care of early, get the correct settings set up, and then everything works a lot more smoothly down the line. Now, that clip you just saw, that was a very hastily edited Fusion clip that I did. Basically just did 2 shots, one of me on one side, one on the other, and then did a quick mask and put them together. I'm sure you might have noticed a lot of faults. The lighting was different on both sides. The autofocus kind of tweaked out a little bit. Sometimes you kind of saw the bookcases almost breathing, like there was something coming out from behind it. And I purposely didn't try to change any of that. I just did a quick mask so that you could see both sides and put it up there. But that sounds like a great project for when we get to the Fusion page, the color page, the edit page, and we'll take care of that then. But thanks for watching this video. There's a lot more to come. We're going to cover every chapter of the user preference manual. So until then, live to learn and learn to live.